This is a 2014 McLaren P1, and it's one of the greatest supercars of the modern era. Only 375 of these exist in the entire world. It has over 900 horsepower and it costs almost $2 million. And this one is for sale on Cars and Bids. More on that in a second. Today, I'm going to review this very special car and show you all of its quirks and features. Yes, that's right. This McLaren P1 is for sale and it's being auctioned live on Cars and Bids. This is a tremendously special car. Every P1 is, but this has just over 4,600 miles. It's finished in a great spec and it is just so special. So, once you finish watching this video, click the link in the description below to visit the live auction for this McLaren P1 where you can bid on it and buy it only on Cars and Bids. All right, time for the quirks and features of the McLaren P1, starting with a little overview just to underscore how special this car is. So, when this came out 10 years ago, it was part of the Holy Trinity of Hypercars. 3 competing hypercars that all came out around the same time and were tremendously fast and expensive. The others were the Porsche 918 Spider and the LaFerrari, and although all 3 are very special cars in their own right, the P1 is by far the rarest. Ferrari made over 700 LaFerrari models, Porsche made 918 Spiders, and McLaren only made 375 units of the P1 road car, plus another 60 or so P1 GTR race cars, and then there were about 20 or so prototypes, some of which got sold on later to customers, although even with those added, it's still a lot rarer than the rest of the Holy Trinity. And oh boy, is it fast. Under the hood, which is actually a carbon fiber engine cover that only a trained professional is allowed to remove, but under there, you got a twin turbo V8 that made 730 horsepower and 530 pound-feet of torque. That was combined with an electric motor that added more power and torque for a grand total of around 900 horsepower and 665 pound-feet. Absolutely amazing numbers, even 10 years later. Now, all P1 models are rear-wheel drive. They all had a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission, and for the environmentally minded among us, this car can travel about 20 miles on fully electric power. Not that you care. What you care about is 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds and a top speed approaching 220 miles an hour. This car is downright fast. But enough with the basics. There are quirks and features to discuss, and so we will discuss them, starting with getting in and the key, which is actually just a regular, fairly normal McLaren key. You can see lock, unlock, a trunk popper. Looks like the key on every other McLaren, but that's where the normalness ends for this car. You walk up and you instantly see there's no door handle. To get in, you reach into the air intake, and then there are 2 buttons in there, as you can see. One of those buttons electronically pops the door open. The other button locks the doors of this car. Now, the way you can tell them apart is the buttons are shaped in different ways. The open the door button curves inward or downward, and the lock the door button curves outward, so you wouldn't mistake them. But once you got the car unlocked, you press the right button, the door opens, and of course it opens up, just like a true hypercar door should. And with the door up, you can see some very interesting things. For one, you stare right down into the air intake when you climb into the car, which frankly is just plain cool. You also have 2 buttons mounted on the bottom of the door that then are accessible when the door is open. This is the trunk release, as you can see, and also the button to put the car in tow mode, so the alarm doesn't go off, the electronics don't get wonky, and it knows it's being towed. Those 2 buttons show up with the door open. Now, once you climb inside, you can also see some interesting things. For one, there's a plaque plaque on the driver's door sill that tells which chassis number your P1 is. You can see this one is number 69 out of the 375 unit production run. You can also see here there are some controls mounted on the door. Kind of interesting. These are your controls for your headlights and your power mirrors. They're mounted right there on the door in sort of a special, exotic way. You also have, of course, your power window switches here and a handle that you can use to open the door. It's electronic, so you pull on the handle and then the door pops open, you push it open, and then you climb out. But anyway, next you climb inside the P1 and you sit down in a very tight bucket seat. This is a very narrow, tight seat, keeps you firmly planted in place for your high-speed cornering so you don't slide around in this car. And when you look at everything in here, it looks like a cockpit. All of the controls are angled exactly towards the driver in easy reach of where you're sitting on your left side, your right side, everything facing you, and it especially feels like a cockpit because there's a canopy above your head. You look up and there are two individual glass panels. One is above the driver and one is above the passenger. Now, this car has sun visors. They're neatly integrated into the roof right here, and you can drop them and shield yourself from the sun while you're driving, but there's no cover for the canopies over the seats. You don't have any ability to stop this or to press a button to make the windows not clear like in some newer McLaren models. Instead, you just kind of have some glass above you. I hope you like it. Keep in mind this car was designed in the UK where it's almost never sunny, and so this wouldn't usually be a problem. Here in Southern California, it can get a little toasty. But anyway, next we move on to some interesting controls in this car. We go onto the steering wheel where you have a red I-Pass button. It stands for Integrated Power Assist System. And basically what it means is you can push this button and get an extra quick boost of power in case you're trying to get extra juice to pass somebody on the racetrack or the freeway. Now, on the left side of the steering wheel, you have a blue DRS button. This stands for Drag Reduction System. And you press the blue DRS button in order to drop the wing. So if you're driving around, the wing is up like in normal operation, providing some downforce. Suddenly you need a quick burst of power for a top speed run. You press that, the wing goes down, makes the car as slippery as possible to put you into your top speed mode. And you can adjust more than just that to change the performance of this car. You have two dials in the center labeled H and P. The one on the left, H, that stands for handling, and you can change it to N, S, or T for normal, sport, or track. Over on the right, P, that stands for performance. That's your acceleration, also normal, sport, or track modes. But you can't just switch the dials to go between modes. Instead, you first have to press the active button to confirm that you really want to change these settings, then you can adjust the dials. It's a two-step process, which also feels very airplane-y. You're making this change, you better be sure of it. Now, directly below those dials, you have three buttons. You can see launch, which puts the car into the launch control mode, race, and then boost for extra power. And you got more controls up above in the center control stack. You have your engine start-stop button up here, which is actually a fairly standard-looking thing, not too much drama, surprisingly. And then you have E-mode and charge buttons. E-mode will put the car into fully electric mode. Like I mentioned earlier, it can go a certain distance on full electricity with no gasoline engine at all. Very quiet, very efficient. Of course, the charge button, you press that and I assume it'll drive the car in a way that charges the electric motor a little bit more, so you have full access to your full complement of fuel economy. Now, despite the fact that this is a hypercar, one of the Holy Trinity, some of the controls in here are actually fairly standard like you'd expect in a normal car. Like for instance, the dome lights. You can tap the dome lights, turn them on. It just kind of feels like what you do in a Honda or Toyota. Same deal with the rear view mirror. Nothing special or interesting here. Looks like it came off of any normal car, although it is sized kind of accurately to fit the unusually small rear window of the P1, but still looks pretty standard. And in the center control stack, you have an infotainment system in here, which is also a fairly standard unit. It's vertically aligned, which is a little bit unusual, although some manufacturers do that besides McLaren. And more importantly, it's a touchscreen that has your basics. Your radio is in here, and you can cycle through your radio stations. Media to connect a media player, like a phone to listen to your music. You have your climate controls in here. You can adjust the climate controls, put on the air conditioning, just like in a normal car, although I do love the fact that the little guy that shows where the airflow is going is a race car driver with a helmet. That is a wonderful McLaren touch, but you have all of your typical basics in here. You even have a navigation system in this car, although it's not very good. You go into navigation, you have an idea of where you are, you can put it in destination, but time has marched on from this car. Things have gotten better and left this behind. Now, the other interesting thing to note about this infotainment screen, the button to go home below the screen in the center, this big button, the shape on that button is the aerial view of the shape of McLaren's headquarters building in the UK. This is what that building looks like, and that's your home button. It's kind of a hidden little Easter egg, in case you didn't know why that's the design and shape they chose. Anyway, moving further down here in the center control stack, you can see buttons to go into gear. You have neutral in the center and reverse and drive flanking, and of course your hazard lights. You also have your parking brake here. It's this handle or switch that you can push on or off. Also in the center, you have a trunk popper, as you can see, and your power locks. Fairly standard controls. In fact, you even have a cup holder in this car. Between the seats, you can see it here, a cup holder for your drinks, and even a little storage cubby behind it that also includes a USB port and an aux jack in case you want to listen to music on something that, well, still has an aux port. And if you want even more storage than this center cubby provides, well, the P1 has that. Behind the center screen, which is lifted up and tilted towards the driver, that leaves extra space back here for more storage. And so you have another storage compartment back here where you can stick more stuff, and you have a cigarette lighter style outlet, which can also be useful. That's nice to have, this extra storage, because that's one drawback of this car. You don't get a lot of interior storage. There's no storage on the door panels, as you can see, but that makes sense because the doors go up, so anything you'd put in there would just fall out and break. There's also no glove box in this car. That side of the dashboard is just a big hulk of carbon fiber. You don't even get a net between the seats like in most cars. Instead, you have a British flag there. It's mounted on this carbon fiber piece behind the seats. And by the way, carbon fiber is a major story of this car. It is everywhere in this interior. On the dashboard, the center control stack, the steering wheel, the shift paddles, everywhere you look, it's carbon fiber. That is for legitimate weight reduction, not just to look cool. This is a hypercar, and every ounce of weight reduction was important to them. And so you have it all throughout the interior and the exterior. This car is lots of carbon fiber. Now, also worth discussing is the gauge cluster in this car, which is a screen. And in 2013, 2014, a gauge cluster screen was actually a pretty big deal. Not too many cars had it, but this one did. Now, over on the right, you have your traditional gauges. It shows like your temperatures, that sort of thing. You might need to monitor while you're driving. The large gauge in the center, that shows the important stuff. Your tachometer, RPMs, the speed you're going, the gear you're in, all of your typical things you'd want to keep a close eye on. Now, over on the left part of this gauge cluster screen, you have, well, a configurable menu that you can adjust what it's showing, various different pieces of information, and this is also where you control your axle lifter. Now, it's controlled with this rather confusing stalk coming off the steering column. You go up, down, and then backwards or forwards to go further into menus. It's kind of difficult and cumbersome to use, and McLaren has gotten rid of it largely on its newer cars, but the P1 still has this sort of clunky system for operating this portion of the gauge cluster screen. Now, next up, when it's time to get out of the P1, you pull on that door handle like I showed you earlier and push your way up, but just in case the electronic door popping mechanism is broken, there is a manual release located here next to the door. You can see it. You just pull this cord and apparently it will mechanically open the door so you can climb out in case the electronic release isn't working. And next up, we move outside the P1 to go over its exterior quirks and features, starting with the design, which is beautiful, special, striking, gorgeous, exotic, all of the things you would want from your hypercar, although this design language was later used by many other McLaren models. So for some people, it can be hard to tell the P1 from, say, a standard McLaren like a 570S or a 720S. Now, I would say that most car enthusiasts don't have that problem. The P1 just has a look to it, a presence that those cars don't quite have. The width, the length, it just looks different and more special. But just in case you're having trouble distinguishing the P1, the roof scoop is always something you can check. Other McLaren models offer it as an option, but it's very rare. Every P1 had its standard, and that gives you a clue you're looking at something special. Then there's the tail lights, which are very distinctive to this car. They basically follow the curve of the rear bodywork going around the rear grille and the exhaust in back. You can see it is a very special look that not too many cars have, including other McLaren models. It's just on this one, that very special taillight shape and design, which by the way also includes the turn signals. You can see this very thin strip of light integrated back there. It's like they didn't want to mount taillights on this car, so they just stuck them into these curves to comply with regulations, and it looks so special. And since we're around back in this car, let's talk about, well, we'll start with the rear spoiler, which is huge. It goes the entire width of the car, and it has pretty good depth too. It's a large rear spoiler, and it goes up and down depending on your current driving situation, the drive mode you're in, that sort of thing. Now, when the spoiler is fully up, it looks tremendously distinctive. This is not the fully up position, but when it goes up, it is huge, it's way up there, and it generates significant downforce for this car. And with the spoiler in the up position, that's another way you can easily distinguish this car from basically any other McLaren. Now, also notable back here, the center exit exhaust mounted right in the middle. Most automakers would put a license plate there. McLaren says no, the exhaust is more important than that regulatory stuff. Like I mentioned, this car has a twin turbo V8, 730 horsepower, and you can kind of see it through this window in the back, although you can't really see much engine. Instead, you see a carbon fiber engine cover that says P1 and a lot of other carbon fiber back there too. It looks pretty cool, but you don't really get the full engine view like in some supercars. Now, like I mentioned before, you also have the roof scoop here, the carbon fiber roof scoop that brings air into the engine, not just through the air intakes on the side, but also through the roof, and that just looks so cool. That is the mark of a truly crazy car, a roof-mounted air intake. Also worth pointing out back here, you got a couple of hidden flaps. So take a look. This black flap on the driver's side, you tap on it, it opens up, and this is where you put fuel in this car and also coolant under this little flap. When you're done filling it, you just close the flap again and the fuel door is hidden, which is a pretty cool look. Now over on the passenger side, you have a corresponding flap. You press it, it opens up, and this is where you add engine oil and also where you plug in the charger to charge up this car. So these two flaps have a pretty significant purpose, although when they're closed, you wouldn't even know they do anything. It's kind of a neat way to hide that stuff. And finally, we move up to the front of the P1. Let's start with the front trunk, the cargo storage area, which is up here in front. And opening it is kind of an unusual process. So there are several buttons you can press to pop open the trunk. There's one on the key fob, as you can see. There are two other in the car that I've already showed you. So you press the button, but you can't open it once you've pressed a button. Instead, you have to reach inside the nostril of the car. There's another button in here that fully releases it, and then you can open it up. That little button inside the nostril is hidden. You wouldn't really know it's there, but it's part of the process. Now, once you've got the trunk open, a couple of interesting things in here. For one, it's surprisingly large. For a hypercar, almost $2 million, one of the all-time great performance cars, there's a decent amount of space. You could take it on a weekend trip if you want with some bags. You also have a lot of carbon fiber in here too, helps to underscore this car's weight reduction, and you also have a friendly and helpful note to firefighters. In case this car catches on fire, they will go through the two-step process of opening the front trunk, press the button, and then find the other button and press it, and then read this label all while the car is burning so they know how to shut it off. Doesn't seem very likely, but it's there just in case. Now, other items worth noting up front. For one, I've always liked how the headlights closely mirror the look of the McLaren logo. The design on the McLaren logo is meant to look like a kiwi bird because the founder of the company was from New Zealand, and the kiwi bird is like the thing of New Zealand. So that design is also replicated in the headlights, and it's kind of a neat touch that they did that. Now, the other notable thing up here is this front air dam, front lip spoiler. It's very low and it's all carbon fiber. And let me tell you something, when you're driving this car around, all you're thinking about is just how low this is and just how much it would cost to replace a full carbon fiber front lip spoiler like you have in the front of this car. It's a little terrifying, although I'm sure it helps aerodynamics and it certainly looks cool. And with that in mind, time to get terrified and take out the McLaren P1. Let's see what this is like behind the wheel. All right, driving the McLaren P1, and I gotta tell you, this car's 10 years old, and it was a hypercar at the time, but I was curious if it would still feel that special. You know, so many cars have come out that are faster than this now, and McLaren kind of uses the same look on a lot of its cars. Does it still feel special? And the answer is yeah. It's still just as cool as it was back then. And there will forever be a contingent of people who thought this was the best member of the Holy Trinity. And frankly, I don't entirely disagree, in part because I think this car drives the best of any of the others. It has such an amazing sense of occasion to it. It has just such a sense of a moment. It is so special and so cool, and it just feels so exciting and awesome. When you first look at it, when you drive it, the sound it makes, the way it feels is just fantastic. Oh, that sound, that roof scoop, that induction noise over your head. Oh, that is so cool. It is just so excitingly, insanely fast and special and powerful. And here's the thing about this car. It is 10 years on, but this car still feels fast. It still handles well. It still has incredibly quick steering. This car does not feel old at all. It feels just like a brand new modern supercar or hypercar. It is just, the performance is just so impressive. It was amazing then, it's still amazing. And a dual clutch transmission keeps it relevant and keeps it seeming fast, which it is. I will say, it has a tremendously harsh ride. This seat is incredibly tight. The carbon fiber chassis makes for a stiff experience in that you feel everything, you hear every little pebble and rock that comes up. I mean, it's a carbon chassis car. That's the way it works. It's not a car to be daily driven, although you could. You know, when I was a kid, the Holy Trinity of supercars was Carrera GT, Enzo, and the SLR. Apart from the SLR, you wouldn't really want to drive those often. You know, Carrera GT's great, but it's not a daily. All of these Holy Trinity cars could be driven fairly frequently, and that includes this. It has decent storage space, it has infotainment, Bluetooth. I mean, this is a car. It's like a relatively reasonably usable car, and it just so happens to be one of the great exotic cars of our time. Oh, the sound is just unbelievable. The sound is like nothing that a modern McLaren does. It just feels louder. The intake noise, the induction noise, just the engine itself sounds louder, sounds angrier, sounds more aggressive. I mean, this car is just out to kill. It is so cool. I just think, to me, it has such a sense of occasion and such a sense of incredibleness and purpose. You know, McLaren has made a lot of special cars over the years since this came out. A lot of LTs and limited production this and the Sabre and the Senna, and, you know, does this still have the cachet? Yeah, it does. It really, really does. Here's a guy who's absolutely freaking out behind me. And that does happen occasionally, but I have noticed it doesn't happen much. It is interesting. When I drive my Countach, people absolutely lose it, even just general people around. This car, people are like, I just saw it on the McLaren. So is it worth, you know, $2 million or whatever? Yeah. I mean, the thing about this car that makes it so cool is the rarity factor. You know, there are 2.5 times as many 918 Spiders as this. You'll see 3 918s for every P1. Same with LaFerrari, twice as many LaFerraris. This car is really, really, really special and rare and incredibly fast. And you want to start to understand, you know, the market values those things. And when you think about Enzo and Carrera GT, et cetera, you know, the top level, the top echelon of truly amazing supercar and hypercar This is up there. It's one of them. It still is, and it still has this incredible cachet about it. God, it drives well. It just is so flat in corners. It corners so perfectly. The steering precision is better than anything else from its era. It is not just a hypercar that looks cool and is rare, like I would argue the Pagani Huayra is. This car is one that actually is focused and amazing and fast and incredible to drive. And it just happens to also look cool and be incredibly rare. What a treat to spend time with this car. And so that's the McLaren P1, an absolutely tremendous car, one of the great supercars of the modern era with a beautiful look and amazing performance. And you can buy this one on Cars and Bids. Anyway, now it's time to give the P1 a DougScore. And the DougScore is here, 71 out of 100, which puts the McLaren P1 here against the important rivals. It's just a slight step behind the 918 Spider and the LaFerrari. The 918 Spider is a bit more daily usable, and the LaFerrari is a bit more thrilling, earning an extra point in the weekend categories. But mostly the P1 is just plain amazing. One of the coolest cars ever made, and it earns its spot near the very top of my all-time DougScore spreadsheet. That said, I'd still rather have a Speedtail.